Let me begin by thanking Dr. Ajay Shekhar and the Center for Buddhist Studies Kalady for providing me this opportunity. I shall briefly talk about the discourse on Buddhism and conversion in Malabar, focusing on the caste question addressed by the Tiyas, a marginalized community in Kerala. Often referred to as Navodhanam, the late 19th and early 20th century saw the emergence of various caste communities in Kerala, driven by a desire for upward mobility in the context of new socio-political, economic and legal structure offered by colonial modernity. Subversion of the caste system was a central idea of various movements that happened among the Avarna communities. Historically, Tiya movements have been intertwined with SNDP movement, which fundamentally supported Hinduism. Concurrently, mainstream narratives emphasize two ideological perspectives: the spiritual movement led by Srinarayana Guru and the atheist movement led by Sahodaran Ayyappan. Notably, both Tiyas and Idavas engaged in significant discussions regarding religions and conversion. Many individuals from these communities converted to Christianity, Islam and Buddhism due to their ongoing experience of caste discrimination despite being identified as Hindus. Some aspired to form an independent community free from the affiliations of any specific religion. I argue that the resurgence of Buddhism within the Tiya community stems from discontent with both Hinduism and colonial modernity rather than being a mere product of the latter. This is not to negate the fact that colonial modernity played a significant role in the progress of Avarna communities. Contrary to Abby Thomas's claim that Buddhist ideology signifies a continuation of the Navodhanam, which facilitated social mobility for the Avarnas, I contend that it arises from the failures and unmet promises of these reforms. I arrive at this argument by examining the contributions of C. Krishnan, a prominent Tiya figure in the Buddhist movement in Kerala, alongside various articles published in the Tiya magazine Mavadi that he edited, and a few other archival materials. The Tiyas and Idavas are recognized for their expertise in Sanskrit, Ayurveda and astrology. C.V. Kunjuraman, an influential Idava social reformer, argues that this knowledge was acquired during the Buddhist period primarily through Buddhist monks. Even in their material pursuits, Buddhism has had a significant influence, as it is argued that they learned the skills in weaving and agriculture through Buddhist practices. The resurgence of Buddhism among Tiyas is largely attributed to the caste discrimination they faced, persisting even after advancement in education and employment during the colonial era, with notions of pollution and untouchability at the core of these experiences. When C. Krishnan assumed ownership of Mavadi in 1913, he articulated the magazine's intention to address issues pertinent to the religion and education of the Tiya community. Initially, it featured news about Tiya temples and served as a forum for discussing community's progress. A significant controversy arose in 1917 regarding the Tali Road, prompting discussions about untouchability. On November 12 of that year, Colonial Administrator J.A. Thorne issued a notice prohibiting Tiyas and other Teendal polluting castes from using certain public roads in Tali. On the same day, Krishnan defied these restrictions and wrote to Thorne, who merely acknowledged his correspondence without engaging substantively. An accompanying note in Mavadi titled Tali Road argued for re-examination of the definition of public roads and public rights, particularly in light of caste-based discrimination under British rule. Another note, coming forward, acknowledged the Tiyas as Hindus akin to the Nambudiris, but placed them at the bottom of Hindu social hierarchy, highlighting the need for social reform. Articles in Mavadi also showcase some Savarna's perspectives on pollution and untouchability. For instance, Pattathil Balakrishna Menon's piece, Talil Kshetra Nirathum, Teendalulla Jadikaram, addressed the Tali controversy and advocated for the abolition of untouchability. Despite these efforts, the practice of untouchability continued to persist in Malabar. V.R. Shinde, secretary of the Depressed Class Mission, shared his experience in the region in his article South Indian Mysteries, published in Servant of India and later reprinted in Mavadi. He discussed the phenomenon of distance pollution, recounting 3 experiences wherein Tiyas experienced caste discrimination. The first instance was about how Tiyas were barred from entering Agraharas in Palkat. The second one was about the barriers faced by a well-educated Tiya, hindered from using a specific public road connected to a tank owned by a Zamorin Raja. This was none other than C. Krishnan. He added that a European ICS officer was the intermediary through whom the costs for purifying the tank were demanded. In his third account, Shinde describes how a horse carriage he was travelling in, driven by a Tiya, was stopped at a Nair street. Reflecting on this experience, he expresses regret that he did not choose a driver who had converted to Christianity or Islam. As such, conversion seems to offer a shortcut to social or political acceptance that Hinduism does not provide. While pointing to the caste system and the liberation offered by the conversion, the note also mentions how colonial officers acted as the mediators of the Savarnas. An article titled Malabar Grievances outlined the continued oppression faced by the Tiyas, particularly regarding their exclusion from temples and bathing tanks, and in some cases from adjacent roads. This context allowed the Tiyas to question oppressive practices due to their increasing literacy and liberalization. Another key article, Tiyirum Raku Kuttagayum, Tiyas and the Arak monopoly, along with a memorial to John, highlighted the Tiya community's grievances against colonial legislation that exploited them and obstructed their material progress. They specifically challenged the Madras Abkari Act 1 of 1886, which imposed taxes on coconut trees used for tapping toddy, resulting in revenues exceeding the income from local toddy shops. Moreover, it is crucial to acknowledge the way Savarnas appointed in the colonial administration critiqued the classification of Tiyas as a depressed class. Diwan Bahadur C. Karunagara Menon, in his 1919 article The Tiyas in Malabar, disputed Lord Wellington's designation of Tiyas as a depressed class alongside Cherumas. He contended that Cherumas alone warranted this classification, claiming that Tiyas considered Cherumas as polluting castes. Conversely, Menon's earlier 1917 publication, Teendal Kalayuvan Margam Endha, How to Remove Untouchability, exposed persistent discrimination against Tiyas despite their educational and economic advancements. This contradiction underscores a manipulation of the discourse surrounding caste, as he simultaneously acknowledges the existence of untouchability while minimalizing its impact on the Tiya community's status. An editorial note from 1920 discussed the contradictions in religious perspectives, acknowledging long-standing efforts to construct temples while questioning the legitimacy of idol worship. It elaborated on the debate concerning the superiority of Buddhism over Christianity, strongly criticizing Varnashrama Dharma and the escalating instances of untouchability. Citing an order from the Cochin Diwan for prompt reporting on signboards restricting access for Avarna individuals on public roads, the editorial noted the inaction against these discriminatory claims and emphasized a recent advertisement prohibiting Tiyas and others from entering government temples. In response, the Tiya community demanded a royal proclamation to abolish untouchability. Articles reprinted from Madras Mail and West Coast Spectator highlighted both the improved circumstances for Tiyas, such as Zamorin's decision to open a college for marginalized castes, and the increasing incidence of untouchability. Within the community, differing perspectives on Hinduism emerged during the period. For example, M.K. Raman's letter to V.R.M. Chauhan criticizes his argument that Tiyas do not wish to enter temples. Raman also contested Chauhan's use of the term caste Hindus. In the 1919 editorial, a distinction was made between Brahmanical Hinduism and the Hinduism shaped by Rishis and Sadhus referred to as Rishishwaras. The editorial voiced dissatisfaction with Brahminical Hinduism, arguing that it tends to serve the interest of Savarnas at the expense of the marginalized communities like the Tiyas. In contrast, the Hinduism proposed by the Rishis and Sadhus was depicted as more inclusive. The point here is that there was an attempt to defend Hinduism. Although C. Krishnan visited Ceylon in 1899 and encountered Buddhist ideals, it was not until the 1920s, 2 decades later, that he began actively advocating for them. His diary reveals his exposure to Buddhism, including his reading of The Gospel of Buddha by Paul Carus in 1907, his notes on Buddhist scholar Professor N.K. Bhagat in 1914, and his references to Eastern Buddhist Review, a Japanese journal. He visited Buddhist monasteries in Sarnath and Bodh Gaya in 1917. In 1935, he established the Mahabodhi Buddhist Mission in Calicut. According to K.R. Achyutan, Krishnan's active involvement in Buddhist movement began in 1922. As we see, under the final issue of Mavadi in December 1920, the magazine had critical engagement with Hinduism but did not advocate Buddhism. Mavadi resumed weekly publication in 1921, becoming an essential platform for promoting Buddhist ideals. Annual issues from 1925 to 1928 further reinforces these principles. C.V. Kunjaraman's article, Tiyarkku Nallathu Buddhamadam Thanneyanu, claimed Buddhism would greatly benefit the Tiya community. He recognized leaders such as Palpu, Govindan, Ayyakutti, K. Ayyappan and C. Krishnan who supported Tiya conversion to Buddhism. K. Kunjapanikar's article, Tiyarkku Engane Raksha Kittum, urged Tiyas to reject Hinduism in favor of Buddhism, asserting that Kerala was originally a Buddhist region. Krishnan organized campaigns to encourage Yedavas and Tiyas to adopt Buddhism for liberation from societal disadvantages. Kumaranashan contends that Buddhism did not offer true freedom to its followers. His open letter, Mata Parivartana Rasavadam, Mahakavi Ashan Eludhiya Marubadi, he emphasizes that he advocates for Mata Parishkaranam or religious reformation rather than Mata Parivartanam or conversion. K.R. Achyutan noted that Ashan exhibited great respect for the concepts of dharma and moksha, but he was uncertain about the material benefits that might be available if the community embraced Buddhism. As previously noted, some Tiyas and Yedavas advocated for an independent community while opposing Hinduism. In 1932, K.C. Kuttan significantly contributed to establishing the Akhila Kerala Tiya Yuvajana Sangam, emphasizing that Yedavas and Tiyas should not identify as Hindus, which could impede their progress. E. Madhavan's 1934 book titled Swatantra Samudayam or Independent Community further supported this movement, but it faced a ban from the government due to its critique of Savarna hegemony. C. Krishnan and others promoting Buddhist conversion were also involved in this initiative, as were Yedava reformers like Sahodaran Ayyappan and C. Keshavan. Opposition to Buddhism emerged from Tiya elites in North Malabar such as P. Shangunni and Murkoth Kumaran. Potheri Kunyambu in his significant work Tiyar promoted the mass conversion of Tiyas to Christianity, although, as Dilip Menon points out, Kunyambu himself never converted. Several Tiya intellectuals also advocated for Islam as a viable alternative for marginalized communities. In the book Asavarnarku Nallathu Islam, many Tiyas discuss their views in the chapter Eedavarum Madaparivartanavum. Sukumaran argues that misconception about their Hindu identity exists among Tiyas and Nayadis, asserting the Islam embodies Sri Narayana Guru's principle. Tayil echoes this sentiment, suggesting that petitions from these communities to the government have consistently failed to address their concerns. This lack of response underscores the inability of both colonial and native administration to provide justice for marginalized groups. During British rule, various communities utilized petitions to negotiate rights and interests with colonial and native authorities. In 1917, a petition by 7 Tiyas, including C. Krishnan, was submitted to John, the governor of Madras, emphasizing historical exclusions from educational access, particularly the refusal of Samorin College to admit them. This issue was partly remedied by the establishment of the Basel Mission College. The petition revealed the economic and social status of the Tiya community. Only 17.5% of the Tiya community was literate, with only 0.9% of males receiving English education. The 1911 caste census illustrated that most Tiyas were agriculturalists, with 19.1% classified as laborers or woodcutters. Merely 306 individuals from a population of 7,60,000 were earning income from land lended. Mavadi reported various other petitions submitted by the Tiyas to the colonial government. The British administration was often seen as a mediator between the state and native communities, even extending influence to migrants in other parts of South Asia, such as Sri Lanka. In the early 20th century, thousands of impoverished Tiyas migrated from Cochin to Ceylon in search of better opportunities, fleeing the pervasive caste discrimination in their homeland. V.R. Raman Johan's Nyangaluda Colombo Yatra, Our Journey to Colombo, examines the Tiya community's migration to Sri Lanka and the liberation from caste oppression experienced there, highlighting their quest for greater freedom and social agency. In 1933, a memorandum submitted by 7,211 Tiya men in Ceylon to the Viceroy and Governor General of India, Earl Wellington, poignantly details their marginalized circumstances under caste Hindu rule, emphasizing persistent discrimination. The colonial administrators' approach to the representations of Avarnas, including the Tiyas, was characterized by ambivalence and caution. While officials like DM Field proposed solutions through the Public Service Commission, they acknowledged exaggerations in petitions while still recognizing valid grievances. Efforts to avoid alienating caste Hindu rulers or escalating communal tensions were evident. The preference for caution reflects the colonial administrators' desire to maintain stability and prevent conflict. In conclusion, the Tiya community's engagement with Buddhism reflects a profound response to historical experiences of caste discrimination and the inadequacies of colonial modernity. Their quest for conversion is not merely a search for religious affiliation, it symbolizes a strategic reconfiguration of identity aimed at asserting dignity and right against systemic oppression. Through platforms like Mavadi, the Tiyas articulated their grievances and advocated Buddhism, stressing the need for representation and justice. The dialogue around Buddhism signifies their desire for liberation from entrenched caste hierarchies, representing a broader struggle for equality and inclusion. Thank you.